A hospital at 2:13 a.m. is supposed to be the safest kind of quiet. Not empty street quiet. Not abandoned house quiet. This is the kind of quiet that smells antiseptic, hums like fluorescent lights, and promises you that, no matter how ugly the world outside gets, inside these walls, people are trying to save lives. So when the first gunshot cracked through the 4th floor of St. Jude's Memorial, everyone's body reacted before their minds could catch up. Nurses ducked. A patient screamed. A monitor alarmed, high, panicked, mechanical, like the building itself was begging someone to stop. And at the nurse's station, Sarah Jenkins felt her soul leave her body for half a second. Because she didn't see the shooter at first. She saw the blood. Not from a patient. Not from an accident. From the security guard who had been standing near the elevators just moments earlier, now sprawled on the floor like a dropped coat. The guard's radio was still chirping on his belt. Little bursts of static, little desperate noises that meant nothing now. A man stepped over him. Rifle in hand. Mask on. Calm eyes. The kind of calm that doesn't come from confidence. It comes from practice. Everyone down, the man said, like he was announcing a flight delay. Hands where I can see them. No hero stuff. Behind him, 2 more armed men poured out of the stairwell and fanned into the corridor with the tight, efficient movements of people who trained together. They didn't look like thieves. They looked like a unit. Sarah's knees hit the floor. Her palms were wet. Her heart was punching her ribs from the inside. Dr. Marcus Holloway, lead trauma surgeon, ego the size of Seattle, exhausted beyond reason, stood frozen in place like his brain refused to accept reality. He'd spent the last 6 hours patching a gunshot victim from downtown. Now the gun was in his own hallway. And then there was Elena Vance, the quiet night nurse, the wet mop bedside manner nurse, the woman who never made eye contact, never raised her voice, never laughed at the desk jokes. The woman everyone had decided was harmless because she didn't take up space. Elena didn't drop right away. Not because she was brave, because she was calculating. Her hands went up slowly, like she was obeying. But her eyes were doing something else, tracking angles, counting weapons, reading the distance between each gunman like it was math. Sarah noticed it and felt a new, colder fear crawl up her spine. "Elena," she whispered, barely audible. "Get down." Elena lowered herself to the floor with the rest of them, but even then she didn't crumple. She didn't fold into panic. She placed her knees carefully, shifted her weight, positioned herself near the corner of the desk where the line of sight broke, like she knew exactly where a bullet would go if someone fired again. The lead gunman stepped closer, scanning faces. "You," he said, pointing the barrel at Dr. Holloway. "You're the surgeon." Holloway swallowed. "I'm a surgeon, yes. What do you want?" The gunman's smile didn't touch his eyes. "I want your cooperation. Because tonight, this floor becomes my negotiating table." Negotiating. That word landed heavier than the gunshot. This wasn't some desperate robbery. This wasn't a man looking for an exit plan. This was a man who came here planning to stay. He motioned with the rifle. "Phones. In the bin. Now." One of the other gunmen moved down the line, collecting devices. Sarah's fingers shook so hard, she almost dropped hers. She watched her phone disappear into a plastic container like it was the last thread connecting her to life. Elena handed hers over without hesitation. The gunman paused, studying her. "You're not scared." Elena looked up at him, face blank, voice soft. "I'm working." A few people whimpered. Someone prayed. Sarah's eyes stung with tears she refused to let fall because she'd heard it before. Predators can smell crying. The gunman snorted. "Goo." Everyone into the East Wing waiting room. "Move." The corridor erupted in shuffling chaos. Patients on 4 poles. Nurses trying to keep people quiet. A mother clutching her son's hand so tightly his fingers turned white. A frail old man wheezed as he tried to stand. The hospital, built to heal, suddenly became a cage filled with fragile bodies. As they moved, Elena blended. Shoulders hunched. Short steps. Quiet presence. But she wasn't just walking. She was listening. Not to the sobbing. Not to the prayers. To the gunman's rhythm. Their breathing. The sound of their boots on tile. The tiny clicks of safety switches. The way the leader kept his rifle slightly lower than the others, a sign of comfort, not caution. And that's when Sarah saw it, the top of Elena's scrub collar had shifted just enough to reveal scar tissue that ran like a jagged map across her shoulder, old, thick, and intentional. Not a surgery scar. Not an accident. The kind of scar that happens when something sharp meets skin in a place no one wants to talk about. Sarah leaned closer, voice trembling. "Elena, what is this?" Elena didn't answer. They reached the waiting room. The gunmen shoved chairs against the door, blocked exits, and positioned themselves where they could see everything. One stood near the window, one near the hall. The leader stayed in the center like a spider in a web. "Count them," he ordered. A masked gunman started tallying. 17, 18, 19. Then his gaze locked on Sarah. 20. The leader nodded, satisfied. "Good. 20 hostages. 20 lives, balanced on the mood of a man with a rifle." Dr. Holloway tried again, voice tight. "You can't do this. There are ICU patients. There are post-op patients. If you shut down the floor." The leader stepped forward and pressed the rifle muzzle gently against Holloway's forehead, almost tender. "Doc, I don't care about your patients. I care about my leverage." Holloway went pale. Sarah's stomach turned. She felt that helpless, sinking realization. Nobody was coming fast enough. Not security. Not the police. Not SWAT. Not in time. Then Elena spoke, barely a whisper, meant for Sarah alone. "Stay low. Stay alive." Sarah's eyes widened. "What are you going to do?" Elena finally looked at her, and for the first time, her eyes weren't blank. They were focused, present, hard, like the quiet had been an act, and the real Elena had been waiting behind it. "If you were Sarah, trapped in a room with 20 hostages and 3 gunmen, would you try to be invisible or would you risk everything to help? Tell me in the comments, because Elena is about to make a move so subtle, half the room won't even realize the fight has already started." Elena shifted her position by inches, closer to the crash cart parked near the wall. Her fingers brushed the edge of a drawer, testing, confirming. The leader noticed movement and snapped his rifle toward her. "You, nurse, what are you doing?" Elena froze perfectly. Then she lifted her hands again, calm, checking a patient monitor. The leader stared, suspicious. And Elena, still calm, tilted her head like a timid employee. But Sarah saw something else. Elena's left hand was trembling, only slightly, not with fear, with restraint, like a coiled spring refusing to snap too early. And then, from a hallway outside, a radio crackled from one of the gunmen. "Unit 1, a voice said. West stairwell secured. No civilians. We're clear." The leader smiled. "Perfect. Now we wait." Wait for who? Wait for what? Elena's gaze flicked to the oxygen storage warning sign near the maintenance door, and Sarah suddenly realized the scariest possibility. What if these men didn't come to escape? What if they came to end this place? Elena's eyes narrowed. Her breathing slowed. And at that moment, the quiet night nurse didn't look like prey. She looked like a soldier deciding where the battlefield begins. What does Elena recognize in that radio call, and why does it look like she's already chosen her first target? The leader didn't act like a man improvising. He acted like a man following steps. Step 1, take the floor. Step 2, gather the bodies. Step 3, control the narrative. He paced in front of the waiting room, like a lecturer. Listen carefully. Your hospital has something that belongs to my organization. In the next 30 minutes, I will speak to the right people. If they cooperate, you walk out alive. A woman near the back whispered, "What do you want?" The leader turned his head slowly toward her, like she'd offended him by speaking without permission. "I want what was stolen." Sarah's skin prickled. "Stolen? What could a hospital steal? Organs? Drugs? Evidence?" Dr. Holloway swallowed. We don't know what you're talking about." The leader's smile returned. "Oh, you will. Hospitals keep records. Samples. Things people don't want the public to see. And tonight, you're going to help me access them." He pointed to Holloway. "Doctor, you and 2 nurses are coming with me." Holloway's voice shook despite his attempt at control. "You can't just." The leader slammed his rifle but into a chair. Wood snapped. People screamed. "I can," he said coldly, "because no one here has power except me." Then his gaze moved across the nurses, selecting like a shopper. "You," he said, pointing at Sarah. Sarah's lungs stopped working. "Me." He nodded, enjoying her fear. You're young. You'll be obedient. Sarah's knees almost gave out. She looked desperately at Dr. Holloway, but he looked just as helpless. Then the leader's eyes landed on Elena. And you, quiet one. Elena stood without hesitation, shoulders still hunched, eyes down. Sarah wanted to grab her sleeve, wanted to whisper, don't go. Don't leave us. But Elena didn't look afraid to leave. She looked like she'd been invited. They stepped into the hallway, the gunmen forming a triangle around them. The waiting room door shut behind. The sound of chairs scraping into place sounded like a prison lock. Now it was just them. 3 hostages and 3 armed men in a sterile corridor lit by buzzing fluorescent lights. The leader spoke into his radio. We're moving to records. Keep the room quiet. A voice answered, copy. Elena walked slightly behind Sarah, close enough that Sarah could feel her presence like heat. Sarah whispered, barely moving her lips. Elena, who are you? Elena's answer came like a breath against Sarah's ear. Someone who doesn't panic. That wasn't an answer. Not really. They passed a nurse's supply room, a medication cart, a linen closet. All ordinary until you realize ordinary places can become weapons if someone knows how. The leader stopped at a security keypad door, labeled Authorized Personnel Only. Open it, he told Holloway. Holloway's hands shook. I don't have access. The leader sighed like a disappointed teacher. Then he turned and punched Holloway hard in the ribs. Holloway gasped, folded, and stumbled into the wall. Sarah cried out, instinctive. Stop. You're hurting him. The leader raised his rifle, barrel inches from her face. You want him to stop hurting? Then do what I say. Sarah froze. Tears finally slipped. She hated herself for it. Elena didn't move. She didn't speak. She simply watched the leader's breathing pattern the way a professional watches a countdown. The second gunman stepped up. Boss, I can breach it. The leader nodded. Do it. The gunman pulled out a small device from his pocket, something compact and ugly. A breaching tool. Not something you carry unless you've planned to break doors. He pressed it to the keypad housing. Elena's eyes flicked to it, and Sarah saw something change in her expression. Like Elena recognized the device, recognized the outcome. This wasn't just to access records. That door was near oxygen storage, near maintenance infrastructure, near the kinds of systems that, if sabotaged, could kill an entire building. Sarah's voice cracked. Elena, what are they doing? Elena's whisper was ice. They're setting a timer. The breaching device whined softly. The keypad sparks danced. Then the lock clicked. The leader opened the door and gestured them in. After you. Inside was a smaller corridor, record storage, server cabinets, file rooms. The air was colder here, the hum of machines louder, like the building's brainstem. The leader pointed to a terminal. Doctor, log in. Holloway winced, hand on his ribs, and shook his head. I don't have credentials. The leader's patience cracked for the first time. Then you're useless. He raised his rifle toward Holloway's chest. Sarah screamed, no. And Elena moved. Not a dramatic leap. Not a superhero tackle. Just one step, smooth, precise, placing herself at an angle between the rifle and Holloway. Her voice stayed soft. You kill him, you lose time. You lose leverage. The leader paused. The barrel hovered. He stared at Elena. You're brave for a nurse. Elena lowered her gaze again. I'm practical. The leader smiled. Fine. Nurse. You log in. Sarah's eyes widened. Elena can't. Elena cut her off with a tiny shake of her head. Then she sat at the terminal. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Sarah watched, confused. Elena was the nurse who asked how to fix a printer last week. Elena was the woman who said she spent weekends doing laundry. Elena typed. Fast. Too fast. Not pecking. Not searching. Touch typing is like muscle memory. The terminal accepted a login. Sarah's mouth fell open. The leader leaned in, satisfied. There we go. Pull up patient records from the last 2 months. Specifically, anything labeled North Ward, and anything tagged with the name Vance. Sarah's blood turned to ice. Vance. Elena's last name. Elena's shoulders stayed still, but Sarah saw her jaw tighten. So this wasn't random. They came for her. And suddenly the theme of the whole night snapped into place. The quiet, overlooked people around us aren't always weak. Sometimes they're the strongest protectors in the room, hiding in plain sight until the moment they're needed. Elena clicked into a folder. Then another. The leader's radio crackled again. "Boss, police scanners picking up chatter. They're mobilizing." The leader's face hardened. "Good. Let them. We're ahead." If you want to see how a timid night nurse turns a gunman's plan inside out, subscribe right now, because the next move Elena makes will look like surrender, but it's actually the first strike of a war the gunmen don't even realize they're in. Elena opened a file. A photo appeared on screen. Not a patient. A younger Elena in uniform, face smeared with dirt, eyes sharp, patch on her shoulder. U.S. Army Ranger. Sarah's breath caught audibly. The leader stared at the screen, amused. "So it's true." Elena's voice stayed flat. "You knew." "We knew you ran," he said. "We also know you left something behind." He leaned closer to her ear. "And we know you don't want this hospital full of innocent people to pay for your past." Elena's fingers hovered over the keys. Sarah realized the sick brilliance. They weren't just taking hostages. They were using Elena's conscience as a leash. The leader lifted his rifle and pointed toward the hallway. "Now you're going to give me what I want, or the waiting room starts losing people one by one." Elena didn't flinch. She inhaled slowly, and then she hit one key that made the terminal screen go black. The server hum changed pitch, and somewhere in the walls, a door alarm began to scream. The leader jerked back. "What did you do?" Elena stood up, finally meeting his eyes with something that looked like calm and danger. "I closed the cage," she said, and then the lights on the entire fourth floor flickered. Once. Twice. Like the building itself was holding its breath. What exactly did Elena just lock them into, and how far will the leader go when he realizes he's losing control? When the lights flickered, everyone's instincts screamed the same thing. Something just changed. The leader snapped his head toward the ceiling panels, listening for backup generators, for alarms, for the kind of chaos he could exploit. But his men didn't move with confidence anymore. They moved with uncertainty, small shifts of footing, tighter grips on rifles. Because control is a fragile thing. And Elena Vance had just touched something invisible that made it crack. The hallway alarm blared again, high urgent. A security tone that didn't sound like, "Help is coming." It sounded like, "You're sealed in." The leader grabbed Elena by the collar and slammed her against the server cabinet. Metal rattled. The sound echoed like a hammer strike. "You think you're clever," he hissed. "You think I won't start killing?" Elena's face barely changed. She wasn't posturing. She wasn't acting brave. She was measuring him. "You already planned to," she said, voice calm. "If you didn't get what you wanted." The leader's eyes narrowed. "What I want is simple. You, and what you hid." Sarah stood frozen near the terminal, watching a side of Elena she couldn't reconcile with the woman who whispered apologies when she bumped a cart. Elena's hands were pinned, but her gaze slid, just for a fraction, to a red emergency lever on the wall. Fire suppression system. Then to the maintenance door down the corridor. Then to the leader's gunman on the left, who was now standing too close to a reflective glass panel, exposing his silhouette from behind. Elena wasn't trapped. She was assembling options. The leader shoved her again. "Undo it. Now." Elena's voice dropped lower. "You don't understand what you're asking." "I don't care." Elena exhaled slowly. "If I undo it, you'll have access to the system you're trying to reach. And this entire building becomes a mass casualty event." Sarah's stomach dropped. Mass casualty. The phrase doctors used when the number of dying people was too high to count. The leader smiled, cold and pleased. "Good. You do understand." So that was it. Not stolen medicine. Not blackmail files. A sabotage target. A hospital full of oxygen lines, anesthetic gases, electrical systems, and vulnerable bodies. The perfect place for someone who wanted to make a point with smoke and screams. Dr. Holloway's voice came out strained. "You're insane. There are children here." The leader's rifle swung toward him. "Yes. That's why they'll listen." Elena's eyes flashed. Not anger, something older. Something sharpened by years of being forced to watch people suffer. She looked at Sarah for the first time since the hallway. And Sarah felt it, an unspoken message sliding between them. When it starts, you hit the floor. Then Elena turned back to the leader. "You're not here for the hospital," she said. "You're here because you think I'm still yours." The leader's jaw tightened. "You were trained to follow orders." Elena's voice stayed soft, but it cut. "I was trained to end threats." The leader stared at her, searching her face for bluff, for fear, for any crack he could exploit. He didn't find it, so he changed tactics. He leaned closer and whispered in Elena's ear, just loud enough for Sarah to hear, "If you don't comply, I'll make your new life watch you fail." He stepped back and keyed his radio. "East Wing. Bring me a hostage. Someone loud. Someone who'll make a good example." A beat of static. Then, "Copy." Sarah's blood ran cold. He was about to execute someone to prove he meant it. The leader pointed at Elena. "Now, you fix what you broke." Elena glanced at the dark monitor. "If I turn it back on, you'll hurt them anyway." The leader shrugged. "Maybe, but at least you'll get to choose who dies first." That sentence hit Sarah like nausea. Choice as torture. Responsibility as a weapon. Elena's conscience turned into a trigger these men could pull from across the room. Elena's fingers flexed tiny, controlled, testing her grip, her range of motion. She was calculating how to break a hold, how to redirect a rifle, how to turn a server cabinet into cover. But there were 3 gunmen here, and 20 hostages behind a door, and one wrong move could light the match they came to strike. Elena's eyes softened for the first time, not weakness. Humanity, because she wasn't thinking about winning. She was thinking about protecting. That's the niche truth right there. The strongest protectors aren't always the loudest. Sometimes they're the ones who've learned to stay quiet so others can live. The leader's radio crackled again. "Boss, we've got one." A scream echoed faintly from down the corridor, muffled, panicked, unmistakably human. Sarah flinched so hard she hit the wall. Elena closed her eyes for half a second, like she was swallowing something bitter. Then she opened them and looked at the leader. "If I cooperate," she said, "you let them go." The leader laughed. "No, you cooperate and I delay." Elena nodded slowly, as if accepting defeat. Sarah's chest tightened. "Elena." Elena cut her off with a look. "Not now." Then Elena did the most terrifying thing of all. She lowered her head. Shoulders slumped. Voice small. "Tell me what you want," she said. The leader's grin widened. "That's better. You're going to open the access route to the north infrastructure. There's a maintenance trunk line behind the oxygen storage. Once we're in, we take what we need and we walk out." Elena moved back toward the terminal. The gunman to her right stepped closer, rifle trained on her spine. And Sarah realized Elena was doing it. Elena was going to open the door to disaster. Unless she was setting a trap so precise that the gunman would walk into it without seeing the teeth. Elena's fingers hovered over the keyboard again. She typed. The monitor flickered back to life. The leader leaned in, hungry. "Good. Good. Show me the path." On screen, a schematic loaded. Maintenance tunnels, oxygen storage, fire suppression. Elena highlighted a route. And then, with a single smooth motion, she clicked a button labeled Lockdown Compartmentalized Floor. Every door on the schematic turned red. A second later, deep inside the walls, heavy magnetic locks engaged with a series of thunks that sounded like giant fists closing. The leader's face twisted. "What did you do?" Elena's voice stayed calm. "Isa para zonas. You wanted a cage. I gave you one." He lunged at her. But Elena was already moving, ducking under his reach with a speed that didn't match her shuffling persona at all. She slipped behind the server cabinet, using it as cover like someone who'd done this in places with sand and gunfire. The leader whirled, raising his rifle. And at that exact moment, the waiting room door down the corridor began to rattle violently from inside. Not from hostages, from the gunman dragging someone out. Sarah heard a voice sobbing, pleading. A hostage was about to be executed. Elena's eyes locked onto Sarah, sharp as a command. "On my signal," she mouthed. Sarah's breath hitched. Elena reached behind the cabinet and pulled out something Sarah didn't even know was there. A scalpel. Small. Silver. Ordinary. In Elena's hand, it looked like a weapon designed for war. If you were in Sarah's shoes, no gun, no training, just terror, would you trust the quiet nurse with a blade and a plan? Tell me in the comments, because the next 10 seconds decide whether 20 people live or whether this hospital becomes a graveyard. The leader stepped forward, rifle tracking Elena's last known position. You can't win, Ranger. Elena's whisper floated from behind cover. I'm not trying to win. The waiting room door creaked open. A masked gunman dragged a trembling teenage boy into the hall, muzzle pressed to the back of his head. Boss, the gunman called. This one won't stop crying. The boy choked on his sobs. Please, please. The leader smiled at Elena. Time to choose. Elena's grip tightened on the scalpel. Her eyes didn't go to the boy first. They went to the gunman's trigger finger, then the leader's throat, then the fire suppression lever. A triangle of death and survival. And Elena inhaled slow, steady, like the world was narrowing to a single decisive moment. What is Elena about to sacrifice to save that boy, and will the leader realize too late that the timid nurse has been hunting him this entire time? Elena didn't rush the moment. She owned it. The teenage boy was on his knees in the hallway, shaking so hard his hoodie strings bounced. A masked gunman stood behind him with a rifle pressed to the base of his skull, like the kid was a microphone stand. The leader, Unit 1, smiled like a man who believed fear was the same thing as power. Choose, he said to Elena. Open the access route, or he drops. Sarah's nails dug into her own palm. Dr. Holloway looked like he might vomit. The fluorescent lights made everyone's skin look sickly and pale, like the building was already mourning them. Elena's voice came out low and even. You're doing this wrong. The leader's smile twitched. Excuse me. You're trying to force a decision, Elena said, almost conversational. That only works on people who still believe they have control. The leader stepped closer, rifle angled up. You want to test me? Elena didn't answer. She moved her gaze to the hostage taker holding the boy. She watched his trigger finger, not the gun, not the mask. The finger. Tiny muscles. Tiny movement. That's where life ended. Then Elena looked at the red lever on the wall again. Fire suppression system. Big, stupidly obvious, the kind of thing everyone assumes is only for fires. But Elena didn't see it as a safety feature. She saw it as a weapon. Sarah caught Elena's eye for a fraction of a second. Elena's face was still calm, but her pupils were wide alive. She mouthed one word. Down. Sarah's knees bent immediately, instinctive, like her body trusted Elena before her mind did. The leader noticed the exchange. No signals, he snapped, raising his rifle toward Sarah. That was the first mistake. His attention drifted, and Elena moved. Not like a nurse, not like a civilian, like a trained operator who had been quiet on purpose so everyone would underestimate the speed behind her silence. She sprang sideways, one step, then another, sliding behind the server cabinet's edge. At the same time, her scalpel hand flicked out and slashed down. Not in the flesh. At plastic. The thin cord of the gunman's radio mic, cut clean, like a thread. Static screamed from the unit's chest. The gunman jolted, reflexively reaching down to fix it. That was the second mistake. A human instinct. Elena used it. She launched the scalpel, not as a throwing knife, but as a distraction toward the gunman's boot. He flinched back as metal clinked against the tile. In that half-second, Elena lunged for the wall lever and yanked. The corridor erupted with a violent hiss. A dense, white chemical fog blasted from ceiling nozzles, fire-suppressant foam, spilling into the hallway like winter smoke. It swallowed faces, blurred rifles, erased distance. People coughed instantly. Eyes watered. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. And Elena disappeared. The leader shouted, furious. What the hell is this? Elena's voice came from somewhere inside the fog, calm as a heartbeat. Now you can't see who to shoot. The gunman behind the boy cursed, coughing. His rifle barrel lifted, searching. The teenage boy, blinded, scrambled sideways, hands over his head. Sarah watched through watering eyes as Elena became a shadow that moved with purpose. No guastimotion. No panique. Just clean angles. She slammed her shoulder into the gunman's elbow from the blind side. The rifle fired once, wild bullet punching into a ceiling tile instead of skull. The sound detonated the room's fear. Screams. Coughs. Someone praying again. The leader fired into the fog in rage. 2 shots, Then 3, trying to reclaim control through noise. But foam ruined his sight lines. His men couldn't coordinate. Elena had turned their strength, range, intimidation, rifles into confusion. The leader's voice cut through the chaos. Back to me. Form up. But the radios were useless. The foam muffled sound. The hallway had become a maze made of coughs and terror. Elena grabbed the teenage boy by the hoodie and shoved him toward the waiting room door. Run. Stay low. The boy stumbled, choking, but moved. Sarah, still half-crouched, saw Elena's head turn, listening, tracking. Elena wasn't reacting to the gunshots anymore. She was reacting to footwork. One set of boots was moving left, fast, trying to flank. The leader. Elena's hand snapped out and seized a metal tray from a nearby cart. She tossed it down the corridor. It clanged loudly, echoed. The leader pivoted toward the sound and fired twice. Empty. Elena was behind him. She hooked her forearm under his rifle and wrenched up, using leverage instead of strength. The barrel slammed into the ceiling. Elena drove her knee into his ribs, hard, precise, not frantic. The leader grunted, staggered. For one beautiful second, the rifle was off target. But then the second gunman crashed into Elena from the side, tackling her into the wall. Elena hit hard enough that Sarah heard her shoulder smack tile. The foam swirled. Elena vanished again in white. Sarah's heart seized. That was the opening. That was the moment the gunman needed. Dr. Holloway yelled through coughs, "Elena!" The leader's silhouette appeared, rifle back in his hands, breathing hard, voice shaking for the first time. "You're not a nurse," he snarled. Elena's voice answered, softer now, closer to pain, but still controlled. "And you're not leaving." The leader wiped foam from his mask and saw the waiting room door ajar. Hostages could run. He raised his rifle toward it. Sarah screamed, "No!" The leader's finger tightened, and the lights on the floor suddenly went out. Not flicker. Out. Total darkness. A beat of silence, then emergency exit signs glowed red like demon eyes. The leader froze. "What did you do?" Elena's voice in the dark was almost gentle. "I took away your sight again." If this is the kind of high-stakes story you live for, subscribe now, because what Elena does next in complete darkness is either going to save everyone or trigger the exact massacre she's trying to stop. In the dark, a single sound rose above the coughing. A click. Not a gun. A door lock. Somewhere nearby, the maintenance door opened, and from inside, the faint beep of a device powering on. The leader's breathing went sharp. "That's not you," he whispered, suddenly uncertain. "Who else is here?" Elena didn't answer immediately. Then, from the darkness, she said, "Someone you didn't count." And Sarah realized the nightmare just got bigger. Elena wasn't the only hidden variable in this hospital. Who just stepped onto the battlefield with them, and what device is waking up behind that maintenance door? In darkness, fear spreads faster than light. The emergency glow painted everything red, walls, hands, faces, turning the corridor into a nightmare hallway where everyone looked guilty and everyone looked like a target. The leader stood still, rifle up, trying to listen. That's the thing about predators. When they can't see, they don't feel powerful. They feel exposed. A faint beep came again from the maintenance doorway, steady, mechanical. Sarah's throat tightened. "What is that?" Elena didn't answer. She moved through the red-lit haze like she'd practiced this exact scenario 100 times. Her voice, when it came, was barely more than air. "It's a portable generator." Dr. Holloway coughed, confused. "Why would?" Elena cut him off. "Because the floor's main power is now controlled by whoever controls that door." The leader's head snapped toward the maintenance opening. "Close it," he barked at one of his men. Boots moved in the dark. Elena moved first. Sarah didn't see the strike. She heard it. A sharp impact, a grunt, and the sound of a rifle clattering to tile. The gunman stumbled back into view, clutching his wrist. The leader fired once toward Elena's last sound. The shot cracked so loud in the tight corridor that Sarah's ears rang. The bullet hit the wall and exploded. Elena didn't scream. She didn't even gasp. She was already somewhere else. The leader's voice rose, furious. "Stop hiding. You want to play soldier? Let's play." Elena's voice answered from the darkness, closer than it should have been. "You're not playing." Then Elena grabbed the dropped rifle. Sarah's eyes widened. She couldn't fully see it, but she recognized the silhouette. The weight in Elena's hands. A gun changes the whole equation. It's not just defense anymore. It's leverage. The leader hissed, realizing it too. Don't. Elena's reply was simple. Move your men back. He laughed, but it sounded strained. You won't shoot. Not with civilians here. Elena paused for half a breath, and Sarah realized Elena was thinking about that. Elena wasn't a killer. She was a protector in a place packed with fragile bodies. That's what made this so brutal. She had the skill to end it fast, but the environment punished any mistake. The leader took a step forward anyway. You're bluffing. Elena fired. Not at him. At the ceiling's sprinkler line, precise. Water erupted, mixing with fire-suppressant foam, turning tile into slick ice. The corridor became a slipping hazard in seconds. The leader's boots slid. He caught himself, but his stance widened. Elena's voice stayed calm. Now you can't rush. The leader snarled. Then I'll do this the old way. He keyed his radio. Static crackled, half dead from the earlier cut cord, but it worked enough. East wing, he barked. Start the count. 1 hostage every 2 minutes until she gives me access. A pause. Then, copy. Sarah's stomach collapsed. They were going to execute people in the waiting room. Not because Elena refused to cooperate, because the leader wanted her to watch the consequences, wanted to crush her protective instinct until it became obedience. Elena went still. In the red glow, her face finally showed emotion, just a flicker. Rage. Not wild rage. Controlled rage. The kind soldiers carry when they've seen what cruelty does. She whispered, almost to herself, no. The leader heard it and smiled. There she is. The conscience. The weakness. He raised his rifle again, aiming not at Elena, at Sarah. Sarah froze, realizing too late why he chose her. The youngest. The easiest to break. The one Elena might feel responsible for. Drop the weapon, the leader ordered, voice low and steady. Or she dies first. Elena's gaze locked on Sarah. For a split second, Sarah felt exposed, like Elena could see every thought she'd ever had, every fear, every regret. Sarah shook her head frantically. Elena, don't do it. Elena didn't drop the rifle. Instead, she spoke to the leader, as if explaining a lesson. You picked the wrong hostage, she said softly. The leader frowned. What? Elena's eyes flicked to the maintenance door. In the red glow, Sarah finally saw a second figure. Someone crouched half behind the doorway, hands on the portable generator switches. Not a gunman. A hospital worker. An older man in maintenance coveralls, shaking, terrified, but present. Elena had said, someone you didn't count. This was him. He looked at Elena like she'd given him a purpose. Elena nodded once, and the maintenance man flipped a switch. The portable generator roared louder. Suddenly, lights in the maintenance corridor surged on, bright white, creating a blinding backlight that silhouetted the leader perfectly from Elena's angle. He became a target outlined in harsh contrast. The leader jerked, startled, and instinctively turned toward the light. That was all Elena needed. She fired again, low, controlled, into the floor near his feet. The bullet ricocheted with a vicious whine, and the leader jumped back, reflexive, losing his aim on Sarah. Elena lunged. She crossed 3 steps in a heartbeat, slammed the rifle into the leader's jaw, and drove him into the wall. Not to kill, just to disorient. The leader stumbled, dazed. Elena ripped the radio from his vest and crushed it against the cabinet. Plastic snapped. Static died. No more counting, she said. Then the leader recovered faster than Sarah expected, too trained, too stubborn. He grabbed Elena's wrist and twisted, trying to wrench the rifle free. They grappled in the red glow. 2 professionals, 2 wills. But Elena had one thing he didn't. A reason. She pivoted, using his momentum, and slammed his shoulder into the wall hard enough to make him grunt. He spat, furious. You can't protect everyone. Elena's voice was quiet, deadly. Watch me try. Then his hand flashed. He drew a knife from his belt and slashed toward Elena's ribs. Sarah screamed. Elena twisted away, but the blade caught fabric and skin, just enough for a line of dark to spread across her scrub top. Elena hissed once pain, then drove her elbow back into his throat. The leader gagged, stumbled. And in that moment, Elena looked less like a nurse and more like exactly what she'd been hiding, an army ranger who had learned to survive close fights in worse places than this. But Sarah's relief lasted half a second, because a new sound rose from down the corridor, fast footsteps splashing through water, accompanied by a shouted warning. "Boss, they're moving. Hostages are running." The second gunman, panicking, had spotted movement at the waiting room. People were trying to escape in the chaos. The leader's eyes widened with something like hatred. He shoved off the wall and raised his rifle toward the hallway where the hostages would appear. Elena saw it. She made a choice. She threw herself between the rifle and the corridor, absorbing the risk like a shield. Sarah's breath stopped. If Elena takes that bullet, they lose their protector. If she doesn't, civilians die. What would you do? Protect strangers or protect yourself when both choices could end in death? Tell me in the comments, because Elena's next move is either going to become a miracle or a tragedy. The leader's finger tightened. And then, from the maintenance corridor, the old man shouted, voice cracking, "Nurse, behind you." Elena's eyes snapped wide. A third gunman had circled through the service passage, quiet, smart, and was now raising his rifle at Elena's back from 5 feet away. Elena spun. Too late to run. Too late to hide. And the gunman's muzzle flashed in the red-lit corridor. Did Elena just get outflanked at the exact moment she needed to be the shield, and who's going to take the hit in that split second? The gunshot didn't sound like a bang. It sounded like the end of a sentence. Sarah saw the muzzle flash, bright, violent, lighting the foam and water droplets like sparks in a storm. For a fraction of a second, time slowed enough for Sarah to register every possible detail. Elena twisting, Dr. Holloway reaching out as if he could grab the bullet midair, the maintenance man's mouth open in a silent scream. Then Elena moved in a way Sarah didn't know a human body could. She didn't try to dodge. She redirected. Elena lunged into the line of fire, grabbing the third gunman's rifle barrel with both hands and wrenching it sideways as the shot went off. The bullet tore into the wall instead of her spine, exploding tile dust into the air. Elena slammed her forehead into the gunman's mask, hard enough to stagger him, then kicked his knee backward with surgical precision. The gunman collapsed with a howl. But pain and adrenaline make people dangerous. The gunman swung his rifle like a club, catching Elena across the shoulder. Elena's injured side buckled. Sarah heard a sharp, involuntary sound from Elena, more anger than pain. And the leader saw it. He saw Elena falter for the first time. His eyes lit up with predatory opportunity. "There," he snarled. "She bleeds like everyone else." He raised his rifle toward Elena's chest. Sarah's mind screamed, "No, no, no." But Elena's hand was already moving, snatching up the scalpel she'd thrown earlier, now slick with water, fingers closing around it like an extension of her nervous system. She didn't throw it. She used it. Elena surged forward, low and fast, and drove the scalpel into the leader's rifle strap, slicing it clean. The strap snapped, the rifle dropped half a foot, and Elena struck the weapon's side with the heel of her palm. Hard. The rifle clattered onto the wet floor and skidded away. The leader swore and reached for his sidearm. Elena grabbed his wrist mid-draw and twisted until bone threatened to crack. The leader snarled through clenched teeth. "You think you're the hero?" Elena's voice was a whisper in his face. "I think you're a threat." She shoved him backward into the foam-covered wall and pinned him there with her forearm across his throat. Just pressure, not a chokehold yet. Control. But the leader wasn't alone. The second gunman, still free, charged from the corridor, firing toward Elena and the maintenance doorway. Bullets shredded a bulletin board. A glass frame shattered. The maintenance man ducked behind the generator, screaming. Elena released the leader instantly and dropped to the floor with Sarah and Holloway, pulling them behind the server cabinet. "Stay," Elena ordered. The cabinet rattled as bullets thudded into metal. Sarah's whole body shook. "Elena, we're going to die." Elena's breathing stayed steady, but her eyes were blazing. "Not if you listen." She peeked around the cabinet, counting the second gunman's shots. Controlled bursts. He was trying not to waste ammo. That meant he believed he'd need ammo later, which meant this still wasn't just hostage leverage. They still planned something bigger. Elena glanced at the maintenance door and saw the generator's fuel gauge, half. She spoke to the maintenance man, voice sharp but respectful. When I say, kill the generator. The man blinked. What? But the lights. Elena snapped, when I say. Because Elena was designing a trap that required darkness again. Light helped the gunman aim. Darkness helped Elena move. The leader's voice echoed from the corridor, furious, choking on foam. Shoot them. Shoot the ranger. The second gunman advanced, boots splashing, muzzle sweeping like a flashlight made of death. Sarah clung to the floor. Dr. Holloway whispered, Elena, you can't take them both. Elena didn't look at him. I'm not taking them both. She glanced toward the waiting room door again, still ajar. A few hostages were peeking out, too terrified to run, unsure if it was safe. Elena raised her voice, loud enough to cut through the panic, but not loud enough to give away position. Listen to me, she called. When you hear the generator stop, you run. Low, toward the stairwell. Do not stop. Do not look back. A woman's voice trembled from the door. Who are you? Elena didn't answer with rank or bragging. She answered with the truth. I'm the one who's not letting him choose who dies. The leader laughed harshly. They'll die anyway. Elena's jaw tightened. And then, impossibly, she did something that looked like surrender. She stood up from behind cover. In full view. Hands open. Sarah's brain broke. Elena, no. Elena walked out into the corridor with foam dripping from her hairline, blood darkening the side of her scrub top. She looked small again, quiet again. The leader lifted his pistol, grinning. Finally, Elena stopped 3 paces away from him and spoke softly. You came here for my past. The leader's eyes narrowed. I came here for what you stole from us. Elena nodded slowly. Then take me. Let them go. Ders Holloway spirit, horrified, Elena. The leader's grin widened. You think you get to bargain? Elena held his gaze. Yes, because you still need me alive. The leader hesitated, and that hesitation said everything. He didn't need her, which meant the thing she left behind wasn't an object. It was information, or someone, or proof. The leader stepped closer, the pistol still trained on her. You're going to walk with me. We're going to the north infrastructure, and if I don't like what I see... He tilted the gun toward the waiting room door. I paint the hallway with patience. Elena's eyes flicked to the second gunman behind him, then to the maintenance door, then back to the leader. She exhaled once. A signal. The maintenance man, hands shaking, reached to the generator switch. Elena spoke, louder now, almost pleading an act. Please, don't do this. The leader leaned in, savoring it. Begging suits you. Elena's voice dropped to a whisper only he could hear. You're standing in the kill zone. The leader's brow furrowed. What? Elena shoved him. Not hard, not dramatic. Just enough to knock his balance on the slick floor. He slipped half a step. At that exact moment, Elena shouted, Now! The generator died. All light vanished. Complete black. And in the dark, Elena became something else entirely. Soundless, fast, inevitable. A thud. A gasp. A body hitting tile. Sarah couldn't see, but she heard Elena's breathing right beside her, close, controlled. Then Elena whispered, Move. If these stories of hidden strength and sudden courage pull you in, subscribe, because what happens next is Elena's most dangerous play yet. She's about to turn the gunmen against each other, but one wrong second will get a hostage killed. In darkness, the leader shouted, panicked, Where is she? The second gunman fired blindly. 2 shots, one shattering glass, another ricocheting with a scream of metal. A hostage in the waiting room shrieked. Elena hissed, Run. Footsteps erupted, dozens, hostages flooding into the hallway, low and scrambling, like a dam breaking. And then a new sound cut through it all. A phone buzzing. Somebody's phone, still alive, vibrating somewhere on the wet tile. The leader froze mid-shout. Who has a phone? Elena's voice was tight. Sarah, did you keep yours? Sarah's eyes widened in the dark. No, they took it. Then whose phone was that? And worse, if the leader hears it, he'll start shooting into the crowd. Elena moved toward the sound. But as she did, the emergency lights suddenly blinked back on, weak red glow returning, revealing a horrifying tableau. The third gunman was down, bleeding from the head. The leader was on one knee, pistol up. And the second gunman, eyes wild, had grabbed a fleeing hostage and yanked them in front of his chest as a human shield. He screamed, "Stop moving or I shoot." Elena stopped. Her chest rose slow. Her eyes locked onto the hostage's terrified face. And then Elena realized the hostage being used as a shield was Sarah. Sarah's voice cracked. "Elena, please." Elena's fingers tightened around the scalpel again. One gunman down. One leader was wounded but armed. One gunman holding Sarah. And the corridor full of running civilians behind them. How do you save the person you promised to protect when she's the shield and every second you hesitate costs another innocent life? Final YouTube script 4. Gunman storms hospital. Unaware the night nurse is an Army Ranger. Sarah couldn't breathe. The second gunman had her pinned against his chest, one arm hooked around her neck like a seatbelt, the other holding his rifle sideways across her collarbone. The barrel pointed outward, sweeping the corridor where hostages were scrambling past in the red emergency glow. Sarah's hands clawed at his arm, useless. Her eyes watered, not just from fear, but from the chemical foam still stinging her throat. Elena stood 3 steps away, frozen in a way that looked like surrender, until you saw her eyes. They weren't pleading. They were calculating. The gunman jerked Sarah tighter and screamed, "Nobody moves. Not one more step." A woman tripped near the stairwell door and fell hard. The leader, still on one knee, raised his pistol toward the crowd, face twisted with fury and humiliation. "This is your fault," he shouted at Elena. "You turned a clean operation into a circus." Elena didn't look at him. She looked at Sarah, only Sarah. Her voice was low, controlled, meant to keep Sarah's mind from spiraling. "Sarah," Elena said, "listen to me. Don't fight him." Sarah sobbed, I can't." "Yes, you can," Elena interrupted, soft but firm. "Your body is trying to survive. Help it." The gunman barked, "Stop talking." He pressed the rifle harder against Sarah's collarbone. Sarah gasped in pain. Elena raised one hand slowly, empty, open palm. "Easy," she said to the gunman, not to Sarah. "I'm not moving." The gunman's breathing was ragged. He wasn't the cool, rehearsed predator the leader was. This one was breaking. And broken men with rifles are the most dangerous thing in a building full of civilians. Elena's gaze flicked to the gunman's feet. Water and foam made the tiles slick. His stance was too narrow. His heel was half on a puddle. One shift and he'd lose balance. Elena looked at the leader next. The leader's pistol was still up, but his hand was shaking now. Rage was eating his precision. Then Elena looked at the buzzing phone on the floor. Still vibrating. Still betraying their position. She spoke again to Sarah, careful. "When I say now, you drop your weight. Not forward. Down." Sarah's voice cracked. "Elena, he'll shoot me." Elena met her eyes. "He'll shoot around you first. He wants to live." The gunman screamed again, "Shut up." He turned his head half a degree toward Elena, just enough to re-aim his attention. That was the moment Elena needed. Elena took one tiny step, so small it looked like fear. The gunman's rifle barrel twitched toward her. Elena's voice softened, coaxing. "You don't want to do this. Let her go." The gunman's jaw clenched behind the mask. "I don't have a choice." Elena nodded like she understood. "Then neither do I." And she flicked her wrist. The scalpel left her hand with a whisper. Not toward the gunman's face. Not toward his throat. Toward his belt. It hit a hard plastic clip, clink, and knocked something free. A zeti petit bundle. A small pouch. And most importantly, a flashbang grenade. It dropped to the tile between his feet and spun like a coin. The gunman's eyes widened in horror. "No." He instinctively looked down. Elena's voice cut through the corridor like a command in combat. "Now." Sarah dropped her weight straight down like Elena told her, hard, sudden. The gunman's balance broke on the slick floor. His heel slid. His arm around Sarah's throat loosened as he flailed to stay upright. Elena lunged in. She didn't go for the gun first. She went for Sarah. Elena hooked Sarah by the shoulders and yanked her backward and down, pulling her out of a line of fire like she was dragging someone out of a rip current. The gunman recovered enough to raise his rifle, but the flashbang was still spinning at his feet. His own gear. His own mistake. He reached for it, panicking, fingers fumbling in the foam-slick puddle. Elena drove her boot down on his wrist. A sharp crack. A scream. The rifle slipped. Elena kicked it away. The leader saw his plan collapsing and screamed, "Shoot her!" He raised his pistol at Elena. Elena spun toward him. And that's when the flashbang finally detonated. A white-hot burst of light filled the corridor, brighter than the emergency glow, brighter than fear itself. The sound was a violent concussion that punched the air out of lungs. Sarah screamed without hearing her own voice. The leader fired blindly, one shot, two, his bullets slicing into ceiling panels and showering dust. The second gunman staggered, stunned, hands over his eyes. Elena moved through the chaos like she'd been born inside it. She grabbed the leader's wrist mid-shot and slammed it into the server cabinet corner. The pistol fell. She scooped it up, spun, and planted herself between the leader and the fleeing hostages. "Go!" Elena shouted, voice finally loud enough to be heard over everything. "Now!" Stairwell. Hostages poured through like water released from a dam. Some crawled. Some ran bent over. Some dragged others who couldn't walk. The hallway became a stampede of survival. Dr. Holloway crawled to Sarah, hauling her behind the cabinet. "Are you hit?" Sarah shook her head violently, sobbing. "No, no." Elena didn't look back. She kept her focus on the two remaining threats. The leader, wounded pride, wounded ribs, still dangerous, staggered upright, blinking violently after the flash. He wiped foam and tears from his face and smiled with pure hate. "You can save them," he rasped, "but you can't save the building." Elena's eyes narrowed. "What did you set?" The leader laughed. "You'll find out." Then he whistled, sharp and practiced. A signal. And from somewhere deep in the maintenance corridor came a sound that didn't belong in a hospital. A rapid series of electronic beeps. Like a countdown. Elena's head snapped toward the maintenance door. The old maintenance man shouted, voice cracking. "Nurse, there's a device in the oxygen room. I didn't put it there." Elena's blood seemed to run colder. Her voice dropped, urgent. "How long?" The man stared, trembling. "It's counting down 40 seconds. 40 seconds. In a hospital. Near oxygen." Elena's jaw clenched. She looked at the leader. He smiled again. "You pick, Ranger. Chase me or stop the bomb." Elena lifted the pistol toward him, then lowered it, because she wasn't choosing between revenge and survival. She was choosing between one man and a building full of lives. If you were Elena, 40 seconds on the clock, two armed men still breathing, who do you go after first? Tell me in the comments, because her next decision is going to reveal what kind of protector she really is. Elena turned toward the maintenance corridor, toward the beeping. And behind her, the leader whispered to his remaining gunmen, "Follow her. Make sure she doesn't succeed." Elena disappeared into the red-lit hallway. Sarah, shaking, watched her go. Because now the fight wasn't about hostages anymore. It was about time. And somewhere behind a door marked oxygen storage, something was about to turn this hospital into an inferno. Can Elena defuse a bomb with blood on her scrubs and gunmen on her heels, or is this exactly what the leader wanted her to do? The maintenance corridor smelled different. Not antiseptic, metal. Dust. Old paint. The hidden organs of the building, where pipes ran like veins and every door carried warnings normal people never read. Elena sprinted down the narrow passage, one hand on the wall to guide her through slick tile. Her shoulder screamed with each stride, the earlier strike still radiating pain down her arm. The cut in her side burned like a hot wire. But pain was just information. And right now the most important information was the sound ahead. Beep, beep, beep. 40 seconds had already turned into 20-something. The maintenance man, Harold, his name tag said, stumbled after her, wheezing. "It's in there, oxygen room B. I saw wires. I saw." Elena's voice was sharp, but not cruel. "Harold, go back. Get people away from this wing." Harold's eyes were wide with terror. "I can't leave you." Elena didn't slow. "You can save more people than I can. Move." Harold hesitated. Then, like Elena had handed him courage, he turned and ran. That's the niche truth again. The overlooked people aren't just heroes like Elena. Sometimes they become heroes because someone finally treats them like they can be. Elena reached the oxygen storage door. A keypad. Of course. Her fingers flew over it, fast, practiced. The lock clicked. She pushed inside. The air hit her like ice. Rows of oxygen tanks. Metal racks. Warning signs in red, and open flames. Oxidizer. Explosion risk. And on the floor, nestled behind a rack like a rat in a dark corner. A device. It wasn't a movie bomb with cartoon wires and a giant red timer. It was worse. Compact. Purpose-built. Professional. A small digital display. A battery pack. A detonator unit wired into what looked like a pressurized canister and a chemical charge. The timer flashed. 19 seconds. 19 seconds. Elena dropped to her knees, ignoring the wet tile, ignoring the blood seeping into her scrubs. Her eyes scanned the device with ruthless focus. Pressure canister. Oxidizing agent. Trigger relay. This wasn't about blowing a hole in the wall. This was about turning oxygen into a fuel source. A fireball would race through vents, through lines, through corridors like it was alive. A hospital becomes a torch when you weaponize oxygen. Elena's breathing slowed. She spoke to herself, not because she needed comfort, because she needed clarity. Find the trigger, she whispered. Break the chain. Behind her, the maintenance corridor echoed with footsteps. Not Harold. Boots. The remaining gunman. Elena didn't look back. She didn't have time. The timer flashed. 15 seconds. The gunman's voice carried in, shaky with adrenaline. Hands up. Step away from it. Elena kept working. He stepped closer, rifle aimed at her back. I said step away. Elena's fingers found a panel on the device. She pried it open with the edge of her scalpel, exposing the guts, wires, relay switch, a small circuit board. The gunman's breathing grew frantic. The boss said you can't stop it. He said, you'll try and I'll put you down. Elena's voice remained calm. He lied. The gunman laughed, brittle. You can't do this in 10 seconds. Elena's fingers moved faster. Timer. 10 seconds. The gunman raised the rifle higher. Sarah wasn't here now. No civilians in the room. He could shoot. Elena knew it. But she also knew something else. Men like this didn't want to die. And shooting in an oxygen room was a gamble with hell. Elena spoke without looking up. If you fire in here, you might ignite it early. The gunman hesitated, hatred wrestling with fear. Timer. 8 seconds. Elena located the trigger relay, small, black, labeled in tiny print. She had two options, cut the power feed or sever the detonator lead. Cut the wrong one, and the device could auto-trigger. 8 seconds. Elena's mind reached back into something she hadn't used in years, field training. Yodi basics. Enough to keep a squad alive long enough to call the real experts. Elena whispered, primary feed, secondary failsafe, don't cut the obvious. Timer. 6 seconds. The gunman took a step closer. Get up. Elena didn't. Timer. 5 seconds. She saw it, one wire slightly thicker than the others, running into a sealed module. That module would contain the failsafe. If power dropped, it would detonate. Meaning cutting power was death. So she couldn't cut power. She had to interrupt the signal itself. Timer. For seconds. Elena slid the scalpel tip under the relay's signal lead, thin, delicate. Her hands didn't shake. The gunman did. Timer. 3 seconds. The gunman's voice cracked. Stop. Timer. 2 seconds. Elena inhaled once. Timer. 1 second. She cut. The wire snapped like a whisper. The timer display froze. For half a second, nothing happened. Then the screen blinked. Safe mode. Elena's shoulders sagged just slightly. Relief, control, brief. The gunman stared. No, that's... And then, from the corridor outside, the leader's voice screamed through a doorway somewhere. Angry, distant. Don't let her live. The gunman's eyes hardened. He raised the rifle again. Now he wasn't afraid of the bomb, because the bomb was stopped. Now he was afraid of failing his leader. Elena rose slowly, turning to face him. Blood on her side. Foam on her sleeves. Scalpel in hand. The gunman pointed the rifle at her chest. You're coming with me. Elena tilted her head. Where? To the roof, he hissed. Boss has an extraction. Elena's eyes narrowed. He's not leaving. The gunman barked a laugh. You think you're in control because you cut a wire. Elena's voice dropped. No, I think I'm in control because you're standing between me and the only man left who can stop him. The gunman's finger tightened, and Elena did something that made his eyes widen. She stepped toward the barrel, fearless, not because she wanted to die, because she wanted him to flinch. And he did, just a fraction. That fraction was enough. Elena slapped the rifle sideways, drove her shoulder into his ribs, and crashed them both into the oxygen rack. Metal tanks rattled violently. A warning sign clanged off the floor. The gunman stumbled back, trying to regain the rifle. Elena grabbed a tank valve and twisted, not opening it fully, just enough to hiss oxygen into the air like a snake. The gunman froze, eyes flicking to the hissing stream. He knew what it meant. One spark, one shot, one friction strike. They both die. Elena whispered, deadly calm. Drop it. He hesitated. Then he dropped the rifle. Elena kicked it away and shoved him out of the room. But as she stepped into the corridor, she saw the red exit glow flicker again. Power instability, doors still locked in zones. And she heard something worse than beeping. She heard a helicopter blade thump, faint but real, somewhere above the hospital. Extraction. The leader wasn't trapped anymore. If this story has you gripping your seat, subscribe, because now Elena has seconds to reach the roof and stop the leader's final play. And the twist waiting up there changes everything you thought this was about. Elena sprinted back down the corridor toward the roof access stairwell. Her comms were gone. Phones were taken. Security systems were compromised. It was just her, and the man who came here for her. As Elena hit the stairwell door, she saw fresh blood smeared on the handle. Not hers. And on the first landing, a body lay crumpled, one of the hospital security staff, eyes open, radio crushed. The leader had already passed through here. Elena klinged faster, Lunis gurning. At the top landing, the roof door was cracked open. Wind roared through the gap, carrying rain and cold. Elena pushed it wider, and froze. Because on the roof, silhouetted against the city lights and rain, the leader wasn't alone. He had Dr. Holloway on his knees, pistol to his head, and the helicopter was landing. What does the leader want from Elena up here that he couldn't take downstairs, and why is he holding the surgeon like he's the real prize? Rain on a roof feels like punishment. It hit Elena's face in hard needles as she stepped out, the city below blurred into neon smears and wet darkness. The helicopter's blades whipped the air so violently her scrubs snapped against her skin. The leader stood near the helipad markings like he belonged there, coat plastered to his body, pistol steady. His mask was gone now. His face was human, too human, which made him worse. A man who could smile while ending lives. Dr. Holloway knelt in a puddle, hands raised, eyes wide with disbelief. His arrogance was gone. All that was left was a man realizing he'd never been in control of anything. Elena's heart didn't race. It sank. Because she understood immediately, the leader had adjusted. He lost the hostages. He lost the bomb. He lost his team. So he changed the game. He brought leverage that targeted Elena's morality. Ranger, the leader called over the roar of blades. You're late. Elena kept her hands visible but not raised. Let him go. The leader laughed. You still speak like you're in charge. Elena took one step forward. You came for me, not him. The leader tilted his head. You're right. I came for you. He pressed the pistol harder against Holloway's skull. Holloway flinched. But you're wrong about one thing, the leader continued. I didn't come for your body. I came for what's inside your head. Elena's jaw tightened. I don't know what you think I have. The leader smiled again, small, cruel. Coordinates. Names. Safe houses. The drop point. The list you stole when you went AWOL. Elena's eyes narrowed. So that was the thing she left behind. Intelligence. A list that could burn an entire network. The leader stepped closer to Elena, dragging Holloway along by the collar like luggage. You think you disappeared into a hospital and became a nurse? You think washing blood off floors makes you clean? Elena's voice was quiet. It makes me useful. The leader's grin widened. You're not useful. You're a problem, and problems get erased. The helicopter door slid open. A crewman leaned out, face obscured by headset and visor, gesturing impatiently. The leader shouted toward it, 30 seconds. Then he turned back to Elena. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to come with me. You're going to give me the list. And if you refuse... He jerked the pistol slightly. Dr. Holloway winced. I paint this roof. Elena's gaze flicked to the helicopter. She saw something that made her stomach drop again. No hospital branding. No medical insignia. No emergency markings. This wasn't a rescue helicopter. This was their extraction, meaning the leader didn't just infiltrate the hospital. He arranged the sky. Elena's mind raced through options: disarm, shoot, tackle, distract, every tactic in her body. But the roof was open. Wind and rain ruined precision. The helicopter noise covered movement, but also covered cues. And Holloway's head was a hostage. One slip and his story ends. Elena's voice stayed steady. If I go with you, you leave the hospital alone. The leader laughed. You are still negotiating like you can trust me. Elena took another step forward, slow, deliberate. I'm not trusting you. I'm buying time. The leader's eyes narrowed. For who? The cops can't get to the roof before I lift. Elena didn't answer, because she didn't want him to look behind her. Behind Elena, the roof door creaked again. A small figure stepped out, hunched, soaked in rain, eyes wide. Sarah. She shouldn't be here. She should be downstairs, safe. But she'd followed. Maybe because fear makes you cling to the person who saved you. Maybe because she couldn't live with watching Elena sacrifice herself alone. Sarah's voice shook as she called out, Elena. The leader's head snapped toward her, delighted. Oh, perfect. The little nurse. Elena's face flashed danger. Sarah, get back inside. Sarah froze, trembling. I couldn't. The leader smiled at Elena. You bring gifts. He raised his pistol slightly, not aimed at Sarah yet, but promising it could be. Now you have 2 hostages, he purred. You always did care too much. Elena's hands tightened. Her shoulders lowered. Her stance changed. The leader noticed, eyes sharp now. Don't. Sarah looked at Elena, tears mixing with rain. Elena, I'm sorry. Elena's voice softened for a breath. Not your fault. Then she turned back to the leader. Let them go. Take me. The leader stepped forward, pistol still at Holloway. Give me one reason not to shoot him right now. Elena's eyes locked onto the helicopter again. The crewman had shifted. His hand moved subtle toward the leader's line of sight. A signal. Elena finally understood the twist forming. The helicopter crewman wasn't just a pilot. He was in command. And the command didn't want Elena extracted for negotiation. They wanted Elena removed. The leader thought he was leading, but he was also being used. Elena spoke calmly, loud enough for the leader, but watching the helicopter man. Because if you shoot him, you'll never get what you came for. The leader's mouth curled. I'll get it from your corpse. He shoved Holloway forward slightly and aimed at Elena now. On your knees. Elena didn't kneel. Instead, she looked at Sarah and said the sentence that made Sarah's whole face change. Sarah, do you trust me? Sarah's lips trembled. Yes. Elena nodded once. Then she looked at the leader and spoke with absolute certainty. You're going to die up here. The leader laughed. Then his laugh died when Elena lifted her empty hand and pointed, not at him, but at the helicopter crewman. Because you were never the one in charge, Elena said. The crewman raised something in his hand, small, dark. A suppressed pistol. The leader's eyes widened, finally realizing the betrayal. He spun toward the helicopter, and the crewman fired. A muffled pop in the storm. The bullet struck the leader in the shoulder. He screamed, staggering back, pistol discharging wildly into the air. Holloway collapsed away, crawling. Sarah screamed. Elena moved like lightning, tackling the leader as he fell, slamming him into the wet rooftop. The leader fought, snarling, blood mixing with rain. They shot me. Elena's voice was ice. You were disposable. The crewman stepped forward, pistol aimed at both of them now. Ranger Elena Vance, he called out, voice distorted by headset. Stand down. You're coming with us. Elena froze, because now she understood. The network wasn't just outside. It was inside systems, in logistics, in extraction teams. They didn't want her dead. They wanted her controlled. The crewman leveled the pistol. Last warning. Sarah's voice cracked behind Elena. Elena. Elena's mind moved faster than the rain. She needed a weapon, a distraction, a way to survive without getting Sarah or Holloway killed. Her gaze snapped to the helipad's edge where safety equipment was mounted, an emergency flare case, bright red. Elena's hand slid toward it slow. The crewman shouted, "Don't." Elena yanked the case open and snapped a flare. A violent red fire erupted, bright enough to blind, hot enough to make the air feel like it was burning even in the rain. The crewman flinched back instinctively, raising his arm. Elena used the moment to shove the leader's body into the crewman's legs. Both men stumbled. Elena grabbed Holloway's collar with one hand and Sarah's wrist with the other and dragged them toward the roof door. "Move," she yelled. They sprinted, but the leader, wounded and furious, fired one last shot toward Elena's back. The bullet tore through the air, and Sarah screamed as she fell. Elena spun. Sarah was down, clutching her side. Blood. The leader's laughter turned into a wet cough. "You can't save everyone." Elena's eyes went wild for the first time. Not panic, something worse. A protector realizing the cost. If you were Elena, shot friend bleeding in the rain, enemies behind you, helicopter inches from escape, what would you do first? Tell me in the comments, because Elena's final choice flips this entire story and reveals who the real predator has been all along. Elena dropped to Sarah's side, hands pressing the wound. "Stay with me." Sarah sobbed. "It hurts." Elena's voice shook for the first time. "I know." Behind them, the helicopter blades changed pitch. They were about to lift. And Elena looked up at the crewman, then at the leader, then at the helicopter. And she realized something horrifying. This wasn't an extraction anymore. It was a cleanup. Would they leave with Elena, or would they erase every witness on that roof before they fly? The helicopter's blades roared louder, the pitch rising like the building itself was screaming. The crewman, gun still in hand, stumbled back to his feet, rain streaking down his visor. The leader lay half on his side, clutching his wounded shoulder, face twisted in shock and betrayal. Sarah was bleeding, trembling, trying to breathe through pain, while Elena pressed her hands hard against the wound. "Stay with me," Elena repeated, voice low, intense. "Look at me." Sarah's eyes were glassy. "Elena, don't let them." "I won't," Elena said. And for the first time, her calm sounded like a promise carved into stone. Dr. Holloway crawled toward them, hands shaking. "I can help." Elena didn't look away from Sarah. Pressure. Now. Holloway pressed his hands down, grimacing as blood soaked his fingers. "She needs surgery." Elena nodded once. "She'll get it, but not if they lift off." The crewman raised his pistol again, shouting over the rotor wash. "Ranger, on your feet. Now, you're coming with us." Elena slowly stood, leaving Holloway with Sarah. Elena kept her hands visible, empty. The crewman's pistol tracked her chest. "Walk toward me." Elena took a step, then another. Her posture was smaller again, nurse-like, subdued. The crewman's shoulders eased a fraction. He thought he had her. The leader, still on the ground, coughed and spat rainwater. They weren't supposed to. Elena glanced down at him. "You thought you were the hunter," she said. "You were bait." The leader's eyes widened. "You're lying." Elena's voice was cold. "Am I?" The crewman barked, impatient. "Enough talking. Move." Elena moved 3 more steps. Close enough now that the crewman's pistol wasn't just aimed. It was confident. Elena's gaze flicked to his holster, his stance, the angle of his elbow. She measured his grip. Then she did something that looked like surrender and was actually a death sentence. Elena stumbled, just slightly, like pain finally caught up. The crewman leaned forward instinctively, one hand reaching just for balance. That was it. Elena snapped into motion, hooking his wrist, twisting his pistol hand outward, and slamming her palm into the hinge of his elbow. The crewman cried out as his grip broke and the pistol flew, skidding across wet rooftop paint toward the helipad edge. Elena didn't chase the gun. She chased the control. She drove the crewman backward toward the helicopter's open door, using the rotor wash like a wall. The crewman fought, but Elena's leverage was brutal. Years of training. Years of restraint finally released. The crewman grabbed for Elena's throat. Elena blocked and countered with an elbow to his sternum. He staggered, boots slipping on rain-slick paint. The helicopter pilot shouted something unintelligible inside the cockpit. The crewman tried to retreat toward the door, and Elena shoved him hard. He stumbled into the doorway and caught the frame with one hand, hanging for a split second. His visor tilted and Elena saw his eyes. Not fear. Recognition. He knew her. Not as a nurse. As the problem they'd failed to erase. "You can't stop it," he rasped. "We're everywhere." Elena leaned close so only he could hear. "Then I'm going to make you loud." She pried his fingers loose. The crewman fell, not off the roof, but down onto the helipad, crashing hard and rolling, stunned but alive. The helicopter's skids rocked as the pilot panicked, trying not to tip. Elena sprinted for the loose pistol now, but the leader, even wounded, had crawled toward it too. He snatched it first, trembling, rain splashing off the barrel. He aimed at Elena with pure rage. "You ruined everything." Elena stopped mid-stride. Behind her, Holloway was still compressing Sarah's wound, face desperate. The leader's pistol wavered between Elena and Sarah, and Holloway, like his hatred, couldn't choose. Elena held his gaze. "You still think this ends with you deciding?" The leader snarled. "It ends with you dead." He squeezed the trigger. Click. Nothing. He looked down, confused, smacking the side like it was defective. Elena exhaled once, almost sad. "Safety's on." The leader froze. "What?" Elena's voice stayed calm. "You never trained with that model. Your hands don't know it." The leader's face contorted. He flipped it, fumbling. Elena lunged. She closed the distance in 2 steps, slammed her forearm into his wrist, and ripped the pistol away. This time, Elena didn't hesitate. She pointed the gun at his chest. The leader's eyes widened. "You won't." Elena's jaw clenched. "I don't want to." She glanced toward Sarah, bleeding, shaking, then back at him. "But I will if you make me." The leader laughed, weak and bitter. "You're still the same. Still trying to be good." Elena leaned closer. "No, I'm trying to keep them alive." Then she did something that broke the leader's confidence completely. Elena ejected the magazine, cleared the chamber, and tossed the pistol away. The leader blinked, shocked. "What are you doing?" Elena grabbed him by the collar and hauled him toward the roof door. "Ending it without becoming you." Down the stairwell, alarms wailed again, different now. "Police." Real response. The building was waking up. The leader tried to jerk away. "You can't hold me." Elena's voice turned to steel. "Watch." They reached the roof door. Elena shoved him inside, down onto the landing. And there, waiting at the top stairwell, were 2 Seattle PD officers in tactical gear, weapons up, eyes wide at the sight of a bloodied nurse dragging an armed criminal like a trash bag. "Hands," an officer shouted. Elena lifted her hands immediately. "He's yours." The officers swarmed the leader, cuffing him. One officer stared at Elena, stunned. "Ma'am, are you hit?" Elena shook her head. "Not important. There's a wounded nurse on the roof. Get medics up now." The officer blinked, then radioed frantically. Elena turned and sprinted back up to the roof. Holloway was still pressing Sarah's wound, face pale. "She's fading." Elena dropped beside Sarah, voice urgent but gentle. "Sarah, stay with me." Sarah's eyes fluttered. "Elena, you're not a robot." Elena's throat tightened. "No." Sarah tried to smile and winced. "Good, because robots don't cry." Elena realized her own face was wet, not just rain. She swallowed hard. "You're going to be okay." Sarah's lips trembled. "Promise." Elena nodded. "Promise." The roof door burst open again, paramedics rushing out with a stretcher, guided by officers. They moved fast, efficiently, and practiced. Elena stepped back as they took over, hands still smeared with blood and foam. Dr. Holloway looked up at her, eyes filled with something like shame. "I judged you," he whispered. "I thought you were nothing." Elena's voice was quiet. "Most people do." Holloway swallowed. "Why? Why are you here? Why hide?" Elena's gaze drifted to the helicopter, now idling unevenly. The pilot had never fully lifted. The crewman was cuffed, groaning, dragged by officers who'd made it up. Elena's expression hardened, because the twist wasn't finished yet. She looked at Holloway and said, because hiding was the only way to keep them from finding the people I was protecting. Holloway frowned. People. Elena nodded toward the roof edge, where officers were securing the crewman. They didn't come for drugs. They didn't come for money. They came for me, because I'm the only witness to a list of names inside the system. She paused, rain dripping from her chin. And because I already gave that list to someone they can't touch. Holloway's eyes widened. Who? Elena's gaze slid down to the stairwell, where Harold, the maintenance man, was standing with an officer, shaking but alive. Elena spoke the final twist like it was nothing, like she'd carried it quietly for years. Harold isn't just maintenance, Elena said. He's federal. Deep cover. My handler. Holloway stared, stunned. That's impossible. Elena's voice softened. That's why it worked. Harold looked up, meeting Elena's eyes across the roof. He gave the smallest nod, confirmation, respect. The crewman thrashed as officers dragged him. You think this ends it? There are more of us. Elena stepped forward, rain and sirens and rotor washed around her like a storm crown. She looked at him with the cold calm of a soldier who had finally stopped running. Good, she said. Then they'll come. She turned to the officer in charge and spoke clearly. Tell your commanders, the network is active. The hospital was a message. But tonight, the message failed. The officer nodded, still processing the fact that the quiet nurse had just dismantled a coordinated attack. Paramedics wheeled Sarah toward the stairwell. Sarah's hand reached weakly for Elena's sleeve. Elena took it. You're going to be okay, she whispered again. Sarah's eyes barely opened. You saved us. Elena squeezed her hand. You helped me save you. As Sarah disappeared down the stairs, Elena stood in the rain, exhausted, bloodied, alive. The leader, now cuffed, was dragged past the roof door. He twisted his head toward Elena, hatred burning even through pain. You'll never be free, he spat. Elena watched him go. Then she answered quietly, to herself more than him. Maybe. She looked out over the city, quiet, sleeping, unaware how close it came to catastrophe because the most overlooked person in the building chose to stand up. And that's the truth that sticks. The strongest protectors are often the ones you don't notice until the moment you need them, and by then, they've already been protecting you for a long time. The helicopter finally powered down. Sirens grew louder. The night's violence began to recede, leaving behind trembling survivors and one nurse who would never be invisible again. If this kind of story hits you, where the quietest person in the room turns out to be the shield, we've got more coming. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Elena walked back toward the stairwell, disappearing into the hospital's glow, returning to the place she'd chosen not as a hiding spot, but as a line she refused to let evil cross. And as she descended, one thought haunted the air like the last echo of a gunshot. If they found her once, how long until they try again? And when they do, will the world finally see the heroes it keeps overlooking?